Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with Sam Silverstein. I asked, for those who may not know, I live near Kerrville, Texas, which was the epicenter of the floods of July 4th, and they greatly impacted me. And I asked Sam if we could do a webinar where we took accountability and a culture of accountability and Sam's thoughts around accountability and discuss the role of accountability in a disaster. And we're going to focus on business disasters, but we wanted to see if there's a strategic framework for managing disruption. That was the genesis of this webinar. I really wanted to do this, as I told Sam, largely for me, but I hope you will get something out of it as well, because the flood made me realize, or made me focus, that sometimes you may lose everything. And I've lived through natural disasters, and I know Sam has as well. And I've seen people lose homes. I've seen people lose various parts of things, but I never see someone lose everything. We're going to move to some key takeaways and really help our audience understand some of the specifics that we think you can use. These are going to be self-evident, hopefully, to most, but let's go ahead and take a deep dive into accountability as being proactive and not reactive. Why is that?
That's the key, Tom. It's about being proactive, because when it's reactive, you're trying to create something after the fact. And you know, you built the firehouse, you put the fire trucks in, you trained the firemen to be ready. You have a system so that they can communicate, so that when there is a fire, they can come and put it out. That's proactive. Reactive would be, my house is on fire. Tom, what do you think we should do? I think maybe we need to create a fire department and have trucks and people and water, and great. By the time you do all that, the house is burned down. And so it's the same way with accountability in organizations and in communities. You put this in place, you create this when times are good, so that when times are tough, you're ready to jump into action, to leap into action, to move quickly. And that means that you've built this in advance, and you've built the commitments between people. And commitments create resilience, and resilience can withstand the most difficult of situations. We talk about truth, values, collective ownership. It's all going to come down to trust. And when you've created trust, when people trust each other because of their history of actions that support those trustful relationships, you have a reputation that people want to protect and maintain. They thrive in this environment of accountability, and they work hard to maintain that environment of accountability.
So what are some of the call to action steps we can take? And I'm going to maybe start here, Sam, because as I play in the realm of risk management. And so this, to me, is something that every leader does or should do. And I'm going to ask you to overlay this on accountability. Number one, take a look inside. Audit your organization's current crisis readiness through the lens of accountability. I'm going to ask you how to do that, Sam. Train. I have here trained leaders, but I need to expand that to train everyone, because everyone has a role in this. And how does accountability help us? And then integrate, put a plan in place, train on that plan, implement that plan, and integrate it into your operations. Can you have a book on the shelf? Yes. That can be great if you have a notebook. Or what if that shelf's gone? What if the notebook's gone? Where are you going to integrate that language into your actions going forward? So maybe, Sam, if I've tried to give a framework there, but can you maybe slot in how you see accountability as each one of those? And I'm going to even start by re-emphasizing what you've talked to us about in terms of pre-crisis and truth, that you must be realistic, rational, and use the truth to assess your readiness.
You know, what you measure, you treasure. So let's measure things, and let's measure, first of all, let's measure our readiness. Do you have somebody whose responsibility is to say, what could go wrong? What are the what's the likelihood of that going wrong? And what have we done to prepare ourselves in case it does go wrong? And I think that an individual or committee having this conversation from time to time in an organization is a very valuable exercise. If you're doing a leadership retreat and you have a 2-day retreat and you're planning and you're strategizing and creating the future and you're looking at your vision and your mission and all that stuff, if you're not taking an hour for the leadership team to say, okay, what are all the barriers to success in terms of unexpected tragedy that we could face? And how would we mitigate those if we faced them? If you're not doing that, I think you're being negligent to all the stakeholders of the organization, whether they be employees, suppliers, or customers, or investors. So let's audit all of that. The other thing is, if you truly buy into the idea that accountability, an environment of accountability, is one that is going to nurture a better foundation and a better positioning to be able to handle a crisis and to recover from the crisis, then I would say you need to audit your culture. That's why we have the culture audit. We go in, we look at the culture of an organization, we measure 15 indices, we know what's working, what's not working, and then we as leadership make a committed effort to creating the absolute best culture that we can create. That's another audit that I believe that's important and foundational. So those are the steps on the front end. And then the ongoing is, we got to be continuously training, developing our leaders. Because when we develop leaders at all level of an organization and they understand what accountability is and they can step it out, then that reinforces relationships at all levels of the organization. That supports your culture. And then that prepares you for the inevitable, which is a crisis situation. The crisis situation is when the alarm bell goes off at the firehouse. And that's when all the firefighters, all the men and women come together in that moment. That's when they're sliding down the poles, stepping into their pants and their boots, getting onto the truck, moving into action. They're all coming together and operating as a team because you've worked hard on the front end. You've audited anything that's going on within the organization so you know what can go wrong. You've prepared yourself. You built this environment of accountability. You've developed your leaders, and in developing leaders, you've raised the floor. You've raised the ceiling even on how you communicate. And now in a moment of crisis, you're in the best possible position to deal with it.
We've got more information on the culture audit here and a little bit on it. But before we get to a few words about the culture audit, Sam, there's a couple of other questions I really want to explore with you. And I've heard some people say there are no difficult conversations. There are only conversations about difficult subjects. And based on what I saw on July 4th, there were some very difficult conversations. From the business perspective, how should you have a conversation with your employees, with your coworkers, if you've lost an employee to a disaster, if your business literally is knocked from the ground because of a tornado, any of those things that are truly catastrophic? How does accountability help us, help the leader, and help employees in that situation?
We've talked about this, Tom. There's the leader that goes, this isn't personal, this is business. And they want to make it about them. Every conversation is personal. Every conversation is personal, even if you're only discussing business. Look, my next door neighbor yesterday had been returned. My next door neighbor returned from the funeral of a parent. Now, there's a tree on the property line that's dead and leaning in our direction. You think that's the right time to bring up the fact that tree is leaning in the wrong direction? I'd love to get that tree removed. It's their tree. It's leaning in my direction. It's leaning on another tree. It could potentially fall onto the house. They just lost a loved one. Come on. And so I think the leaders that don't understand the personal ramifications, their emotional intelligence is so low that it's not measurable. This is a human experience that we're all going through. Our tombstones aren't engraved with the companies that we worked for and the titles that we held. And anyone that thinks that their business, their organization is more important than my family, they're kidding themselves. And they're not a true leader. They might hold the position, they might have the title, but they're not really a leader. And the story that comes to mind quite simply is this, is my youngest daughter's best friend lived in Kansas City, about 4.5 hours away from St. Louis. And one day she was given the tragic news that her brother had died from suicide. She was scurrying to get out of the office and to get in her car and to get home to her parents and to deal with the aftermath of that situation. And the last thing her boss said to her on the way out the door is, "So, when do you think you'll be able to get back?" And when I heard that, I was infuriated. The boss should have said, "Are you driving? I don't want you to. You should be flying home. You shouldn't be driving right now. Let me get you there. Let me get you a plane ticket. The boss should have been concerned about what this young lady was experiencing, feeling, and going through, as well as her family. That's the human response. And when human beings failed to step up with the human response, then they're not leading. They're distracting. They're annoying. They're getting in the way. And so I know that some of these conversations are difficult. And I have difficulties many times having these difficult conversations. They're not easy for me. But the one thing that I always ask myself is I try to take a breath, I step back, and I go, what is that individual going through? What are they experiencing? And what do they need right now? That's the bottom line. What do they need in this moment? Not what do I need? Not do I need my that tree removed? No, what do they need? Is it compassion? Is it cash? Is it a place to sleep? Is it a meal? Is it a shoulder to cry on? What do they need? Provide for them what they need, and you're building a relationship that will last a lifetime. That's accountability in action, and that's what needs to be done in these difficult situations.
Sam, let me flip. We've got about 10 minutes, so let me flip the question to the following. Let's go away from a natural disaster to an economic disaster, or perhaps a geopolitical disaster, or even a pandemic disaster, which might take away an entire area of your supply chain, where it truly is an economic impact. And the role of accountability in having those conversations, but I'm equally interested in how accountability would allow employees to step forward with perhaps ideas, suggestions, or ways that a leader hadn't thought of, and that a leader can essentially crowdsource his own intelligence from his own employees because of accountability.
When you truly empower your people, Tom, you open the floodgate of input, ideas, resources, information. And I believe that positions you. And so what happens is you think differently than I do. And Tom thinks differently, or Wallace, or Andy, or anyone watching this after the fact in a recording. We all think a little bit differently. We see differently. And we see different things. And when you truly empower your people, then they'll start to see things that you haven't seen. And when you as a leader put out there that we want to be prepared. We want to think about the things that most organizations don't think about so that we can be prepared. Then what happens is all these people in the organization, if they're truly empowered, they're going to start asking questions, and they're going to start seeing things and thinking of things that will position us to be ready for these events that are going to happen. Yeah, are we going to face natural disasters? Sure. There's a greater likelihood that we're going to face a severe downturn in economic conditions, that the extreme inflation that we're already starting to see from the tariffs are going to infiltrate businesses. What's going to happen? all these, to me, it's about empowering the people and putting the question out there. All creative thought starts with a question. If you ask the question and empower your people, they'll come up with the answers.
All right. If any of our listeners have any questions, now might be the time, or even any comments. Sam, I really wanted to thank you. As I said when we started this presentation, I really wanted to do this for me as much as anyone because I needed this catharsis. So I want to thank you for helping me for being part of my recovery as well. I don't see any questions, so we'll just go ahead and stop our screen share. But before we do, Sam, could you say a few words about the culture audit?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I always enjoy our conversations, and I enjoy the participation, whether someone's involved live or they're simply watching the replay. These are meaningful conversations to me individually, and you always spark a creativity in me, and I appreciate that, Tom. This is a difficult situation for you and your community, and so hopefully what we've spoken on today will help you or help those around you. And those that are participating, let's share this with other people, because we need to prepare ourselves individually and organizationally. We need to be prepared for natural disasters, economic disasters. These are things that are going to happen. And if we're prepared, then we lessen the impact on other human beings. And that's a gift. That's a gift. So often we look at and we focus on growth. We want to grow our organization, and we're not looking at sustainability. And there's a difference between growth and sustainability. And part of sustainability is being prepared for natural disasters. And part of that comes down to building this environment of accountability where people truly care about each other, where we look after each other. And because we're looking after each other, we're looking after the organization. And so that's why we offer the culture audit. It's our tool that gives the data that we need to be able to help a leader determine what's next. What do we need to do next to develop our leaders? What do we need to do next to develop our people and our culture so that we have a culture that is, in essence, an environment of accountability, and it positions us to be in the best possible place, not only in good times, but when times are tough.
So, Sam, we've had one question come in. I think it's pretty much right up your alley. But the question is from Tom Mapp: how do you recommend empowering people, and maybe some practical steps using accountability?
It's a great question, Tom, and I appreciate that. There's an interesting thing about people. They want to have a voice. You want to empower people, give them a voice. Now, here's what leaders do, Tom. I have an open door policy. Anyone can come into my office at any time and share their opinion with me. I know one leader, he literally took his door off the hinges to show that he had an open door policy. Now, that's crazy, but okay. Now, there's two problems with that. One, the open door policy. You can come in and share what you think at any time. Great. What's the track record in the organization of leadership doing something with the feedback that they're getting? That's my first question. Is there evidence that when people share concerns, thoughts, issues, that leadership is making decisions around that? Because if there's evidence that decisions are made and they address these situations, that's going to encourage it to continue. But if there's evidence that they actually don't make decisions around that, then that's going to shut it down, and that's not empowering people. But here's the thing that's overlooked. People communicate differently. You know, Tom, you asked a question. I appreciate that. Someone else might not come forward with the question. Someone else might not come into the leader's office. And so as a leader, we need to go to them, because there are people in an organization. If you go to them and you go, Sue, how's it going today? What challenges, in your opinion, Sue, what's the one thing that I need to know about that I might not know about? Because when you go to your people, then the people that don't like to step forward, they'll open up, they'll share. And when you create this understanding that people's voices are wanted, that you actually seek them out, that you're responding to them, then you're going to be empowering your people. And they will come forward with all the solutions for all the challenges, because the people that are closest to the situation are usually best equipped to solve it. So thanks for that question, Tom. I appreciate it.
So I wanted to thank everyone, and especially thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you everyone that participated, and we look forward to next time and next conversation.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day, one actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network, available wherever you listen to podcasts.